After years of waiting for the release of what we only knew as the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom is finally here! What with how the collective gaming hive mind drones have responded to this game online, you could have easily mistaken it for the second coming of Christ. At least we're not gonna crucify him a second time, right? Why are you looking at me like that? Is it the Koroks? I mean, yeah, some people have been literally crucifying Koroks with a new Ultra Hit. No? Oh, come on! Everybody loves this game! It's just Breath of the Wild, but bigger! Sure, you didn't think Breath of the Wild deserved its praise and perfect scores either, but you still gave it a pretty solid review overall. But listen, how can the rest of the industry see this as like a no-contest game of the year with nearly unanimous perfect scores all around, and you are the only person who, once again, doesn't agree? I haven't said a thing yet. Oh, I see, so you do like it? Nope. Okay, well, I thought it was fun. And I had the insightful experience of playing it alongside Dark Souls 2. Doesn't the internet hate that game? That's what I heard as well. But guess what? We're talking about Zelda, right? It's the direct antithesis of Tears of the Kingdom in almost every way. Because it's an underrated sequel versus an overrated one? Because Dark Souls 2 is conceptually and mechanically a pure evolution of its previous installment, taking chances and creative opportunities to recapture the feeling of the original's core design philosophy to create something entirely new, as opposed to directly copying it outright for an unimaginative and safe sequel like Tears of the Kingdom. Don't tell me this is gonna be one of those reviews. I literally have a master's degree in fine art, so this may just be my deeply analytical background showing through when I say that Tears of the Kingdom is a lazy, horrendously written, bloated mess of a game that completely misses the entire point of Breath of the Wild. Yeah? And here's why. Like most of you, I played Breath of the Wild. If I wanted to play it again, I would just boot it up and do so. I don't need to pay $70 for something I already own. Okay, I do agree the price hike for this game in particular does feel a little greedy, considering how similar these two games are at times. My point is that Breath of the Wild was engaging because it was a fresh idea for the series, exploring something entirely new while also going back to its roots. And Tears of the Kingdom is a grossly uninspired sequel just blowing bubbles in the bathwater, accomplishing absolutely nothing. Okay, so it's structurally identical to Breath of the Wild in almost every way, so I guess you could just check out that review and call it a day, shameless plug. I might sound overly bitter about the inspirationless design, and I'm sorry, but that's the entire point of a sequel. Otherwise, why was this even made, other than money? We've got to start somewhere, Hamster. I know, I'm sorry. I wasn't even that excited about this game for pre-launch, and I am still disappointed. So this time, Link's got 4 different abilities, replacing his Sheikah Slate ones from last time, and the big gimmicky one is called Ultra Hand, allowing Link to combine objects on the fly with magical glowy toothpaste to construct all sorts of vehicles and solve puzzles. You know, this is weird because it makes for some fun gameplay when it works, but it never once feels like Zelda. I almost wish this gimmick was instead used in its own new IP instead of blowing it on Zelda in a one-off game where we'll likely never see it again, as it never meshed with Zelda in the first place. I did have some fun building all sorts of crazy contraptions, but I quickly realized that the game's awkward physics and battery limitations restrict its usefulness drastically, and I ended up just throwing some fans on the back of a glider wing almost every single time instead. Cause it's time consuming! It takes you out of the game! The controls are clunky! Battery-powered gear all have limited despawn ranges, and because of all this compounding, you'll likely stop trying to build new creations and instead just use the basics so you can get a move on. Your next ability is Fuse, which is different from your other fusing ability for absolutely no reason. Yeah, it's not like we could have done with some utility to make the shrines more interesting instead. Yeah, so this filler ability lets Link basically use Ultra Hand but on his weapons, shields, and arrows. The reason you'd want to is to increase their durability, versatility, or attack power. People complained about breakable weapons, so instead of fixing the problem, Nintendo actually made everything more brittle just to incentivize this new time-wasting exercise. How come when I fuse like a boulder to my sword, Link doesn't struggle to lift it or anything? The game doesn't behave logically at all when it comes to this fuse ability, and it could have made for some super creative gameplay where you have to resourcefully twist your environment into weapons, but instead everything's just seen as a number. Also, my least favorite part of Breath of the Wild is the ridiculous amount of time the game makes you sift through menus. Not only is this problem amplified in Tears, with even more clutter in your bottomless pockets, but fusing arrows one shot at a time with a time-stopping menu taking you out of the action every single shot is an abject failure in understanding the the flaws of Breath of the Wild. But fusing stuff to your shield, on the other hand, is where it's at. Your shields are no longer just for blocking and surfing. You can now attach springs, cannons, and even whole minecarts to them just to increase their versatility. Regardless, the breakable gear disincentivizes you from playing with the cool stuff you found in favor of just attaching one stick to another stick. Moving on to the next ability is Ascend, allowing Link to dive upward and swim through the ceiling to reach the roof. Considering the entire point of Breath of the Wild was to subconsciously tease you into getting on top of things, this, it kind of takes all the fun out of it. Really? I didn't like it because it felt like 30% of the shrines were just reminding you that you even have this ability, as if I'd forget considering it's designed to get you out of the game's overkill of caves and wells. You can also use Ascend to subvert most of the game's puzzle design, as if rocket shields and crafting super long bridges weren't enough for you. These abilities are all so overpowered and nearly impossible to design around, most of the shrines ended up being basic tests of the same thing over and over again. You're forgetting the most broken one of all. Oh, yeah. So Recall is just time stop again, except it'll actually make objects return to their original positions too. This is incredibly busted. Not only does it send enemy projectiles sailing right back at them, or giant boulders back into the sky for you to ascend with, but it also allows you to cheese pretty much every shrine in the game all by itself. So you acquire all these abilities in a contained starting area like the Great Plateau last time, before descending to the greater map. However, the Great Sky Island is no Great Plateau, feeling more stale and dumbed down than before. Worse off is that you'll realize that the opening Sky Island makes up the majority of the landmass in the sky. Yeah, exactly like this game. The suckiest part about this is when you'll descend, you'll practically be directed toward the first town, where you'll get your main quests in, even Paraglider, sabotaging Breath of the Wild's best moment, freely flying away from the Great Plateau in whatever direction you wanted and ready to take on the world. I fought against this for as long as I possibly could in my livestream series, which you can go watch, shameless plug, until I inevitably gave up and realized just how hand-holdy and chit-chatty this game is compared to its predecessor. Once again, completely missing the elegance of Breath of the Wild. Well, with the Sky Islands being disappointingly bare and the entire map of Hyrule being recycled from last time, the new changes to discover are all in the new caves and enemies, even though it just kind of boils down to them looking a little more horny. Enemies, as in they just put like horns on everything and called it different. Hey, they brought back likes and Gibdos, so in that sense it's neat. But anyway, you'll also notice that all of the shrines have been moved around, which mechanically, of course they are, but it's kind of a shame because last time the terrain was specifically modeled so that you would discover new shrines over, around, and between the mountainous landscape, giving you distracting new goals to work towards. Yeah, and this time you can just pause, fast travel to a nearby tower, get launched in the sky, scope out everything from above, and just fly right over to wherever you want to go. It's cool the first few times until you realize that you're actually being robbed of the entire reason that Breath of the Wild felt so good to explore. But the coolest addition to this game is the depths, a whole new map below Hyrule that you'll explore by diving through massive caverns and slowly illuminating the darkness, revealing the map with light roots. The light roots even correspond in location with shrines up on the surface, helping you seek out any of those hidden shrines that you missed. The fact that they hit the depths pre-launch as a surprise for players was really cool. I just wish it were more fun to explore. So yeah, the depths is covered in gloom, which is the new name for malice for some reason, and all of the enemies down there deal damage in gloom as well, making it a bit annoying to traverse. Actually, I was gonna say it kind of sucks because of the sheer darkness, making vehicular travel, you know, the entire main gimmick of the game, extremely difficult and even more time consuming. Oh, I was gonna say it sucked because the only reason to go down there is to mine and collect Zoanite, a new material you'll need 100 of to craft a single energy charge, which you will also need 100 of in order to increase your measly battery by one little notch. If I wanted to play Minecraft, I would have. But how come Zelda lately is just devolving into a generic looty crafty game? I don't buy the new game just to cook new recipes or mine bigger numbers in caves, and I can't imagine that's what the Zelda community wants either. At least there's some new threats in the depths, but regardless, you won't find anything down there, on the surface, or in the sky that'll even remotely replace Guardians in terms of their threat level. The ancient Sheikah technology all just inexplicably vanished along with your Sheikah Slate. In our original review, we kept accidentally referring to the champions as guardians, but the champions all return, well, minus Revali, thank God. Instead, we get Tulin, the headstrong twerpy bird, filling in the same role. Okay, now this absolutely sucks. So once again, you have 4 dungeons to complete in the exact same 4 places as last time, where you'll join up with pretty much the same 4 people as before and get a marginally different ability than last time. Like, I played this game already, give me something new! Now you're starting to sound like me. And I could swear that pre-launch, Eiji Aonuma claimed that this was a return to traditional dungeons or something like that. Bull crap, these are just as short and easily cheesable as last time. There is a hidden 5th one at least. At the expense of losing Hyrule Castle as a dungeon, let's not pretend that's a good thing. Well, the dungeon bosses aren't all phantom iterations of the same thing. But instead we just got a bunch of puzzle bosses? I'm sorry, I'll take a challenging duel boss any day over a gimmicky clean the sludge or rock'em sock'em robots fight. Keep it coming, Mr. Positive Gamer, this is a good cleanse. I'm not even at the worst part yet. Now to activate any of your companion's abilities, you have to physically run up to them and tap A before you can get their effect, instead of just having it mapped to a freaking button input like last time. Yeah, why is the game going out of its way to make its only changes quality of life hindrances? Tulins is just Revali's Gale, but behind you. Yunobo just blows stuff up, Sidon makes things wet, and freaking Riju tiptoe dances away from you constantly, making you have to chase her down to even initiate her goddamn lightning ability, which instead of simply using like last time, she's apparently lost all concept of how to aim unless Link shoots an arrow at something that is specifically enclosed within her slowly expanding yellow bubble of electricity. Don't you just wish you could spin attack like last time? The boss fight where you need her to cooperate is so outrageously bad, I don't know if words can properly describe it. This massive boss needs to be completely within her electric bubble in order to be shot with an arrow and thus struck by lightning and made vulnerable, but it's always backing away from you and shooting you with blasts of energy, and freaking Riju's electric orb just fizzles out if you can't shoot something in time, making you chase after her again. All the while you're being absolutely swarmed with Gibdos, and Riju is just mockingly scurrying away from you like a hyperactive ballet dancer. Did you even like this game? Other than that, it's just like Breath of the Wild, and that's good. Yeah, it's a pretty good video game. You think so? But it's a terrible Zelda game. What am I supposed to say? It's exactly the same as last time. Technically, it's better optimized than last time, allowing you to fly and zoom through areas more quickly. But this is just a Majora's Mask situation, where the models and animations were just ploinked from last time. Ploinked is a word. At least Majora's Mask was an entirely new game with new ideas shaking up the groundwork. Well, the sky is hazy and the depths are jet black. What else do you want me to say? This game's story absolutely doesn't respect your time. Considering our Breath of the Wild review was under 14 minutes and looking at how much longer this one is, not the same. Thing is, we have actual points and aren't simply rambling for minutes on end. And that's what most of this game's dialogue is like. Characters just needlessly banter back and forth about nothing, far longer than even I could tolerate. After your first regional phenomenon quest, you will almost certainly be mashing A through the other 3. I made sure to fairly read it all too, even out loud most of the time, just to make sure that nobody could come along and say that it got better later or anything. So I can now confidently say, no it doesn't. Probably the most frustrating part about the story is how incomprehensibly moronic Link is this time. He finds out the truth about Zelda's whereabouts and the regional phenomenon pretty quickly, but he won't warn anyone or share what he's discovered, even when he is working as an investigative journalist on the matter and people's lives are at stake. You think he's exaggerating, but when half of the game's quests could have been immediately solved or outright prevented had Link just said something to anyone, then it'll drive you insane throughout the course of the game. So it's high time we finally talk about the story itself. So here's your spoiler warning skip time if you haven't cleared the game yet, or realize by now that it's not gonna be worth your time. However, I really want to discuss a few things that happen in particular, considering how absolutely awful this story is. I wouldn't say awful, just not well thought out, and badly in need of an editor. The game begins with Link and Zelda in a freaking slow walking simulator segment, culminating in them uncovering Ganondorf's corpse beneath Hyrule Castle, which comes to life, destroys the Master Sword, and flings Zelda into a ravine. How do the actual Breath of the Wild developers not understand the elegance to their opening of their own game to make such a colossal misstep in this sequel. Probably because it just came out in interviews that they didn't play or research anything since Breath of the Wild came out and development on Tears began. If that wasn't egotistical on their part, it was monumentally dense. Speaking of not doing your research, turns out Zelda was flung into the distant past and meets Rauru and Sonia, the original king and queen respectively of the newly established Hyrule, dealing with the looming threat of Ganondorf invading the kingdom and eventually overpowering everyone. You're piecing all this together by finding Dragon Tear memories, just like last time, by the way. So to restore the broken Master Sword and safely transport it to Link in the future, Zelda decides to swallow what's called a secret stone, because naming things is hard, which transforms her into an eternal dragon. She was warned to never do this as it would effectively kill her in the process, but she does it anyway just to ensure that the future could be saved, as the Master Sword could be slowly restored in her care until Link in the future can find her and uncover what has happened. When it hit me at what happened, it was really something. I saw the huge light dragon fly by and quickly launched from a nearby tower to see it, whereupon closer inspection, I saw the Master Sword lodged in its forehead, and I realized that was Zelda's hair, and all of a sudden it was just so sad and genuinely a powerful way to deliver back the Master Sword to Link. Yeah, and then the game continues to hit you with more and more cutscenes, making it painfully clear exactly what happened to Zelda, as if we were all as hopelessly brain dead as Link when it comes to picking up on lore. I thought it was really well done. Until I had to sit through all the explaining afterward where the game just assumed I was too stupid to figure any of that out. The game has absolutely no confidence in its own storytelling, that's for sure. I haven't even gotten to the worst part about this yet. It was at this moment that the game shifted from being mediocre to outright bad in my mind. And once that happened, everything else just kind of snowballed from there. And to better explain what I'm talking about, I think I need Hamster to elaborate a little bit more on how time travel works in The Legend of Zelda. So this has all happened before back in Ocarina of Time, and the game made it clear how going backward or forward in time and altering history would create a split timeline. For more information on how all of that works, just check out the episode we made explaining the timeline, shameless plug. So follow me here. Zelda is sent back in time, presumably before any other game happens, making Ganondorf's appearance bring more questions to light, but let's not even go there. Yeah, so Ganondorf exists before Demise even happens? Are we just retconning all the past Zelda games now, or has Nintendo just stopped trying? Anyway, she's sent back in time, and even Rauru explicitly corrects Zelda's thinking in saying that the Ganondorf she encountered at the basin of Hyrule Castle was not the same guy they are currently dealing with, because she comes from an alternate future where she never traveled to and interfered with her past at all. And he's absolutely right! That is exactly how Ocarina of Time works and why Link had to slay Ganon and stop Ganondorf in the past as a child. So let's visualize this. Zelda goes back to another timeline, and her solution to get back to Link after being corrected about how time works by Rauru himself is to become an eternal dragon and wait it out through the millennia to return to modern day, where she assumes Link will be waiting. Problem is, they no longer share a timeline. Link won't be there. Even if Raru's very correct assumption about how time works is false, then how come we never see the light dragon flying in the sky in Breath of the Wild? Forget that mistake. This also means that there were 2 Zeldas and 2 Master Swords at the same time in Breath of the Wild, as well as every other game that took place between this enormous gap, which is heavily implied to be all of them. There were also 2 Ganondorfs as well if their logic is to be followed, but the game can't even follow its own logic. It's the same Ganondorf in the past, and Zelda's dragon transformation trick works, both in direct contradiction of not only how the series has handled this in the past, but also how it was just explained to us by the King of Hyrule himself, who's a furry, by the way. We neglected to mention that. Zelda's series origins just got retconned to a furry and an elf girl, who both bite the dust before bearing any children as descendants, by the way, but let's not dwell on any more catastrophic plot holes any longer, because this game sure as heck doesn't. Anyway, back in our timeline, whatever. Link investigates 4 regional phenomena, all boiling down to Ganondorf manipulating people and doing dirty deeds through a puppet Zelda he fabricated. And since Link is a complete imbecile, he falls for this every single time. Regardless, you gather an actual party, although it's only in spirit form because these people have got better things to do, I guess. You go to Hyrule Castle, proceed to fall for the same Phantom Zelda trick over and over again. Oh my God! And the group then catches wind of a 5th sage, albeit extremely slowly, and the breadcrumbs to this dungeon was hidden behind yet another painfully obvious Phantom Zelda ruse that Link totally fell for back in Kakariko Village. So I found this dungeon early, but the game refused to let my hand activation thing work until I was far enough in the story to do so, which makes absolutely no in-game sense and sabotages the entire philosophy of Breath of the Wild. Again. After getting the 5th sage, you dive down below the castle where Ganondorf is obviously waiting, fight a long series of battles meant to simply offer speedrunners a challenge, which for the record didn't work at all, as they easily overcome hordes of monsters and a boss gauntlet by simply clipping through walls, duplicating their items, and glitching weapons. Oh, and once you do beat Ganondorf, he does the obvious thing. Waiting for my phase 3, that's the easiest of the ones. Oh, eat it, man, I wanna fight a dragon. And then Zelda's gonna come in and fight us, that's my guess. I don't know how he knew about that, but okay. Yeah, that's not getting explained either. Which leads to yet another easy 3rd phase final boss spectacle fight. But dragons are cool, so I like it. The light dragon appears and forces you to draw the Master Sword if you haven't already, and only exists in this fight to catch you if you fall as you fight in the sky. I get that they wanted Ganon to only be killable by the Master Sword, but oh boy do I not like this. So after beating him, the game pulls a Xenoblade 2 and for absolutely no reason, magically brings Zelda back to life from her dragon state. Don't fix it, no. Oh my goodness, no, don't do it, no. You're ruining the sacrifice, don't do it. Why, no, don't, oh no, don't. No, I protest to this. Bad, no! Look, barring all the mistakes and sloppy dialogue, this story was almost good with Zelda's shocking sacrifice. But this is absolutely inexcusable. Just like in Xenoblade 2, it completely soils the entire point that the sacrifice even existed for. Aside from the fact that Zelda is saved by the very people who directly told her that there'd be no going back if she decided to go through with this. So I guess we're retconning stuff from within the same game at this rate. Hold on, so what was Calamity Ganon? Good question, because the game directly claims that Ganondorf's power didn't wane until Zelda and Link just so happened upon his corpse in the depths. Meaning that this entire game was just an outrageous coincidence? And Calamity Ganon has nothing to do with Ganondorf. Then what the heck was— Don't know, don't care. How did you screw up a story this badly? Hey, the devs didn't dwell on it, so neither will I. This music was either all ripped from Breath of the Wild, or they're new tracks that remix old classic themes from Ocarina of Time and Link to the Past, which goes against the entire aesthetic philosophy of Breath of the Wild's soundtrack in the first place. You say that, but somehow this soundtrack is 10 discs long. For crying out loud, it has a total runtime of 12.5 hours. Just think about how much better this story would be had they sat down and thought about it for just 12.5 minutes. Anyway, it's the same as last time and I still don't care for it. I used to like it, but I played a couple hundred hours of this soundtrack years ago, so now it's just getting on my nerves. Alright, all that sounded pretty harsh, but to be honest, it's still basically Breath of the Wild again. The final battles are especially fun, albeit totally predictable. But the shrines this time aren't the least bit challenging due to your overpowered abilities. The entire game seems to be mostly designed for speedrunners and bait for funny video clips online. I can't accept that The Legend of Zelda has seriously regressed this far in such a short amount of time, even though it's happened before. I'm gonna stop you right there. I think Skyward Sword was better than this. Whoa, you get right out of here with that. It had real dungeons for one. And more of them. Well, yeah. The motion gimmick at least fit the IP as opposed to this Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts rip-off Ultra Hand. Sure, but the game was just as chatty and annoying, but at least its story made sense. I don't like what you're insinuating. It even had real permanent items that let you better explore the world and engage with combat. You know, like an actual Zelda game. All my items broke and so did my heart. I think Skyward Sword is a better Zelda game than Tears of the Kingdom. What have you got to say about that? This game's $70! Skyward Sword is $50. But everybody else loves this game! And you know Nintendo's never gonna change after rolling in this much cash. This might be the end of traditional Zelda games as we know it. And on that note, the positive gamer in me at best sees the fun in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom equaling its own weight in gloom, with an average 5 out of 10. When its only good aspects are effectively ripped from Breath of the Wild without any care or context, the rest of it genuinely feels like overhyped, overpriced DLC. The critical gamer in me genuinely sees the flaws in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom equaling in severity to Skyward Sword with a devastating 3 out of 10, albeit for completely different reasons. This game proves that Nintendo has absolutely no understanding as to why Breath of the Wild became the industry standard for open-world games in the first place with this tone-deaf, greedy sequel. Sure, your positive rating can fluctuate wildly for this game based on how much you like creating giant flaming penis rockets, but not your critical score. So be honest here. What do you think? Let us know about your positive and critical scores in the comments below for Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. If there's anything we can learn from looking at Dark Souls 2 and Tears of the Kingdom together, it's that you should never thoughtlessly conform to the popular consensus of a game. Be your own person and form your own opinions, even if it means disagreeing with my own. I don't care, I'm not better than anyone else, but if you can't separate yourself from feeling the way that you were told to feel about a video game, then you are just playing with yourself. I am honestly absolutely bamboozled that this game was so bad. I wasn't even like hyped for it or anything, and I thought this game was great. How? I don't get it. And even more so, I don't understand why am I the only one? I feel like the only one who thinks this way. Please in the comments, tell me that I'm not alone here. And thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe for more and use the links in the description to nominate your own episode. And thank you to all of our Patreon members, Aspen, Arrow, Sid, Genio, Laura, and Squad Fam. Booyah!